Thanks, folks. Hi, my name's Peter Nied. I'm from Amazon, and I'm here to talk about getting your pull request merged. And just in case anyone's not familiar with the parlance, I'm an engineer on OpenSearch. I like to use engineering terms. I like to use GitHub a lot. And pull requests is how we get code into our open source code bases. If we look here at this diagram, we can see what I spend half of my time doing, maybe. I spend a lot of time looking at code. And I also, I don't know how accurate it is to say this, but I also contribute code to a lot of different places too. That number says 54. I have a feeling about 30 of those are my own personal repositories, but maybe I'll take a little credit for that. I'm also a maintainer of OpenSearch's security plugin. I also maintain the .github repository, which is one of our project-wide kind of settings, configuration repositories, so it's a pretty important one to monitor. And then finally, but I think most importantly, I'm a maintainer of the OpenSearch core code base. So I see a lot of code. Yeah, I think that's given me a little perspective on it. To talk a little bit about kind of the pull request lifecycle to demystify that for folks. Unfortunately, where we kind of step into this lifecycle, and there's that ellipses at the beginning, that's usually where most people think their job is done, which is the job of I built the feature, I fixed the bug, I did the improvement, I found the typo, and that unfortunately is not quite the end of the story of your code going into a code base. But to make obvious what that is, here's kind of what that looks like. So there's you make a pull request, you get it reviewed, you somehow iterate to green, whatever that process is for that repository, and then that change is merged. Yay! And then maybe more stuff happens and it's deployed one day, hopefully soon. But I'm going to talk about that part of the process right there. This is not quite an engineering talk. I'm an engineer, but this is not quite engineering the same way most engineers think of it. There's a lot more like soft skills that are involved in this, and the first kind of realm in this is creating connections with those maintainers. Maintainers in the OpenSearch project, they're the ones that are going to be merging your changes, so you're going to need to be interacting with them. And the way I'd like to start that is by being brief. I've seen many pull requests, I've seen many issues, and especially I've seen RFCs that are pages and pages and pages of text, which I assume someone spent a considerable amount of time and energy writing skillfully on their topic of domain knowledge. And maybe it's just me, but I don't have that much domain knowledge about all these different domains. And so the shorter and more concise those topics are, the easier it is going to be to get someone to take a look at and hopefully start giving you thumbs up or thumbs down on what to do next. So I would forcefully suggest being as brief as possible, because that'll just speed up almost everything else that happens here. One of the other things is there's usually GitHub actually helps projects do this. I imagine other open source code bases do this as well. They encourage you to do things like write a contributing MD. That's a document that says how the project wants contributions. Maybe there's some particular thing that a project needs. Some projects like contributing license agreements. We don't have those in the OpenSearch project, but we do have this requirement for a thing called the DCO. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. That's actually documented in that contributing MD. It's a great opportunity to see that coming, to know what's going to be expected of a contribution before you get into a place where you're arguing, I don't want to make this change with a maintainer. And then along that lines, there's also these issue templates. They help call out the kind of information that maintainers are looking for as they make decisions about merging that code or accepting an issue. For example, and I know there's a lot of words on the screen right now, and please don't try and read them all. This is the template for OpenSearch Core, which at the top has a comment that's invisible. So if you click Open Pull Request and just press the button right away. But there's some guidance here. It was written so that it would be followed. So if a maintainer spent the time and energy to write this, it probably will do you a good service to try and at least understand the purpose of it and go along those things. I love checklists personally. Maybe this is my type A personality, but checklists I find are really nice to just either X or strike through that section. And so I'd highly recommend if you want to work well with the maintainers by using the things they've already created, like these templates that'll really give you a step up on that. So one of the things that you run into, I've talked about these maintainers that just they float down and they find your pull request and they pick it up and they work on it and they help get it merged. That's a little idealized. The maintainers are busy. Maintainers usually are building features that they are trying to ship for whatever they're trying to do. And so they might not be paying attention as much as you would like as someone who's trying to contribute code into their code base. So here's a couple places to look for maintainers or a couple ways to find them. There's this document in all the OpenSearch repositories called Maintainers MD. That basically says who's in charge, and I believe that's even audited so it's kept up to date, so you can know those people are around. But that gives you a broad view of the project, so for smaller projects, that might work well for you. For larger projects, especially OpenSearch Core or OpenSearch dashboards, I'd really recommend looking at the commit history. That'll tell you who's making changes, maybe in a particular area. Also pull request history, because you can see who is actually merging the changes. So if there's a particular kind of change that you're looking to get into the code base, you will kind of know who's reviewed things like that before. And then kind of connected to that is once you've found a name and maybe you want to make sure they get included on your project or included on your pull request, mentioning them on GitHub is a great way to do it. We also have the OpenSearch Slack. I'm not saying this so everyone asks me to review their PR on OpenSearch Core. However, the OpenSearch Slack is a great way if you're having trouble getting that motion in order. It's just it's one more real-time communication mechanism to ask for that. And then finally, one of the benefits of having that DCO that maybe was a pain is that it forces you to put an email address in your commits, so you can find the email address of every maintainer in the code base. So you can certainly email them as well in case you're having trouble getting a hold of them another way. When you're actually going through that pull request cycle, you're trying to get to green, or at least I'm calling get to green, my own lingo maybe. It's about what are all the unchecked things that need to be checked before this merges in the code base. And GitHub Actions is one of the great tools I use so that I don't have to do very much. And so here's an example of you made a change. Maybe you think it was innocuous. Maybe it's very complicated, and some things broke. There's a details button on the side. Please click that button and see what happens. If you don't understand something, post it out to the pull request itself and say, hey, I don't understand how to deal with this. The maintainers are there to help facilitate this process, but they're not going to hold your hand through every step of it. And so if you can do some of that legwork and at least then ask about how to move forward, that'll really give them a hand. And let them know if you're stuck on something or if it's not clear why something isn't working. All right, so the number one thing I see that gets broken, that is also the number one thing I think that stops pull requests from getting merged, is the DCO failure. So if you click the button on details, you get a screen that looks kind of like this. And at the very bottom, it says summary. And then here, it says, this is not a valid email address. That is very unfortunate that the .com wasn't included at the end of Gmail, and that the tool broke in that or the tool rejected this in that way. It has instructions there on amending your commit. there are instructions, and there's instructions on a number of places for it. So there are resources on how to fix that, and also it can tell you specifically the commit you need to modify. So hopefully that makes that a little faster for you. Now there's another realm, and this is something that I feel most in OpenSearch Core, is that you make a commit to change something like the README file. You find a typo in the README, and you'd say, that is some terrible grammar, let's fix that. And you go to submit the change, and then you get those red checkboxes. And you say, what? This has nothing to do with what I'm trying to do. And so I mostly say, ouch, because it just hurts my heart as a maintainer, because it means that there is some part of that project that is not working well. There is something that's flaky, there's something that hasn't been paid much attention to. If you're interested in becoming a maintainer, it's a real opportunity for something to fix. In OpenSearch Core, there's lots of opportunities to fix that. And the maintainers can certainly use your help there. The maintainers are going to try and help get that along. They're going to try and give you advice, but please be proactive. And I know in OpenSearch Core we have a lot of instructions on just how to deal with those things. But for any project that runs into those unexpected failures, please work with them, and also understand that usually that means the maintainer's not in a good position anyways. So it's an opportunity for us to improve the project together. So the last part of that kind of life cycle I look into is creating consensus with the maintainers. So, okay, we talked about messaging. We talked about dealing with some failures that get reported. Now, how do you work together? And so there's going to be comments, probably. Although, you know what? I have seen a couple of perfect pull requests that were just merged right away. I never made any of those pull requests. Usually those were other people that made them. I myself, usually there's a couple of cycles of back and forth. But what I'd recommend, depending on what you get, is read all the comments first. Just look holistically at what you see there, and it'll become a little bit more obvious in a moment. But one of the rationales for this is you might get a couple comments. You might get a very large number of comments, depending on how interesting the changes you've made. If you've rewritten the whole code base, I believe there was mention earlier of a contributor who showed up to the Go project and rewrote the whole thing, which is incredibly impressive. That person is now a maintainer. But I assume that there was a couple of comments from the previous maintainers about why that was the right choice. And so that's going to happen. You're going to get comments. If you're rewriting a whole code base, you might get a lot of them. Read through those comments, think about what they mean, and then start reacting to them. One of the things I've seen that's really unfortunate is someone will start responding to a comment, and then they'll find another comment that is contrary to the thing that they were just doing. You could have many maintainers, and you can even have other contributors providing comments. So making sure you're spending your time in the most productive directions will probably be the most helpful to you. Now, I mentioned, even if you have one person commenting, there can be different kinds of comments they make. There's things that impact the scope of what you're doing. There's like errors and mistakes. And then there's like nitpicks. The first category of the scope impact, this could be things like, oh, you've submitted a new test case for the project. That would be great. It would confirm a scenario works well. But someone might say, completely rewrite that in a different language, or please make a new test framework. That would definitely change your willingness to participate in making that change. So ironing out those scope impacts will definitely make your life easier and prevent rework as you go. Then the other category is the kind of errors and mistakes. This is something that you just want to kind of get correct, get right with the project. Hopefully those are relatively straightforward on how to address. And then there's this other category like nitpicks. Sometimes there's informational things or comments or questions. I would do with those as you see appropriate. It is perfectly fair to say, I don't think I want to do this, and to push back or to ask for a justification if it's not clear why a particular change is being asked of you, which is all about kind of disagreement now. So there's two sides. There's the project maintainers, what the project needs, and then there's what you can do. If I am fixing a spelling mistake on a Ruby project, which I have never done, but if I was fixing a spelling mistake on a Ruby project and a Ruby check failed, I might just give up and go home right there. And making sure I let the maintainers know I'm providing this fix for a typo, I don't really have much more time and energy on this, gives them an idea on what to do next. Also, on the other side, that project might really need that kind of help. So it gives you an opportunity to know kind of how to engage. And as you communicate what you're capable of doing, and as you understand what the project needs of you, that'll really help bridge that gap, especially if someone says, thanks for adding this new feature. Can you write a backwards compatibility test suite for our entire product? Which maybe is a little bit more time and energy than you were thinking of. So that gets to the last part, which is closure. Now, I didn't say getting merged, which is unfortunate. This was a talk on how to get your pull requests merged, but closure is what you're going to have to be okay with at the end, which is maybe it got merged, which is great. That's a pathway for more. But maybe it just wasn't the right change at the right time. And what I'd recommend is, look at what that project is, look at what you're capable of doing. Projects need different kinds of support, and you need a different kind of support too, so don't beat yourself up over it. Make changes, experiment, work with the community, and also, set it aside and maybe come back to it. Maybe I have made several pull requests to the core project that have been rejected to, add certain changes, certain features, and I'm still going to be coming around for more attempts because that's the way it works. It works iteratively and it works as a community. That's all I've got. I'm on the GitHub and Slack, but I also host a OpenSearch core triage, and frankly, any OpenSearch issues can come there. It's an open forum for everyone. That's 5 p.m. local time on Wednesdays and 9 a.m. Pacific time for those of us on the North American continent. That's me.